brief. The reason we wanted to hold this meeting this evening was a couple of reasons. Number one, we've made some changes to the plan since the plan that was presented during the town board hearing on, I believe that was July 6th, which we hope some people will appreciate the changes. Secondly, when we had that public hearing on July 6th, as many of you know who were there, it's hard to really have interaction back and forth in terms of questions. So we wanted to give everyone the opportunity to answer any questions. We also, again, will keep the presentation brief, but if anyone wants to stick around after and ask more specific questions or take a look at the plans more closely, we'll welcome that as well. Also with me this evening is Bill Solak on behalf of the project sponsor, and to my right is Jake Metzger, the civil engineer from Metzger Civil Engineering. So they're available to answer any questions you may have as well. The first plan that we have here this evening, this is the original plan that we presented back in 2015. Just to acclimate everyone, this of course is Boston State Road, located here with the Tim Hortons across the street. This is Meadow, specifically those homeowners on the north side of Meadow. At that point in time, what we're proposing was multifamily directly adjacent to the homes on Meadow, some mixed-use buildings that we envision being single-story buildings that will be appropriate for local businesses, whether they're landscapers, contractors, et cetera, and then 3 potential hotel sites located here, here, and here. The location of those reflects the fact that obviously for there to be a viable hotel there, it's going to need to have visibility from the 219 and also relatively easy access from the 219. This plan was then subsequently changed based on input received. Again, we're going all the way back to 2015 to this plan. And this is the plan that we presented during the public hearing held by the town board on July 6th. And you can see what we did in connection with this plan is the multifamily that was originally here was moved to here. We infilled that area with 20 lots for single-family homes. We reduced the number of hotels from 3 to 1 and reduced the scope of those single-story mixed-use buildings. In addition, at that point in time, what we said with respect to this back area, which does border some of the homeowners that are probably here this evening, that we were going to leave that available for potential future development, not knowing exactly what it would be, but leave it available for potential future development. Based on the input that we received during the town board public hearing held on July 6th, Jake, Bill, and I went back to the drawing board and came up with this current plan, which we actually have submitted to the town for its review. And what you'll notice, the changes that we've made, most importantly, are we've now left a 60-foot buffer here. That buffer would separate the rear of these particular homes located on Meadow from the new homes that would be located here. That buffer area would be dedicated as permanent open space, meaning we'd be willing to go to the Erie County Clerk's office and record what's known as a deed restriction saying not only now, but forever that area can never be developed. And we'll show you a plan in a second. That 60 feet reflects kind of the line of where the existing vegetation is. And then as we go further back, for these homeowners on Meadow, and we have those addresses labeled, it's 5563 through 5661, and you can come up and take a look at it. This area, rather than saying, well, we don't know what it'll be in the future, we're now designating that as permanent open space. Meaning, again, we're going to guarantee everyone in this room that this area not only will not be developed now, it will never be developed at any point in the future. As a result of that change, the number of single-family homes, used to extend back a little further, has been reduced from 20 to 17. And in addition, and probably importantly for those in the audience, we've moved the multifamily even further away from the rear of those properties on Meadow. So now at the closest point, that distance is actually 480 feet away. So we're nearly 500 feet from those backyards. We now are showing one hotel site located here. We think that would be the best location for a hotel. We don't have a user at this point in time. We have done a marketing study that shows if there's going to be a hotel in the town of Boston, that would be an excellent location, again, because of the proximity and the visibility to the 219. That will not happen immediately, but if we're able to get this project approved, we hope that would happen in the future. The other thing that's important to note is today, that property is zoned for commercial use. So commercial uses are expressly permitted, meaning this entire approximately 36 acres could be used for commercial. What we're asking the town board to consider is actually a downzoning, meaning take it from commercial and allow these two components, the 17 single-family homes and the multifamily units, which have been moved further away from Meadow, to be developed as residential purposes. One of the trade-offs that we're asking the town board to consider, and we specifically wanted your input, is we've now designated 17 acres. Literally half of that site is now shaded dark green. And again, all of those dark green areas would be permanent open space, meaning we're setting aside half of the site and saying it will never be developed. Before we would record that deed restriction at the Erie County Clerk's office, of course it would need to be reviewed and approved by the town's attorney to make sure they're okay with the content. So that's kind of the history of the project, where we're at and where we've come to as a result of the input we received. And then what we simply wanted to open up to was any questions that those in the audience may have.
Where's your other exit, entrance and exit?
The only entranceway is here on the Boston State Road.
You should have two.
Well, there's really no other feasible location to have one.
There's no.
Right.
There's
It does,
none.
right.
But you're supposed to have two.
No, it does comply with the New York State Fire Code.
How do we get
We have
across the
confirmed.
street?
What did you
How do
say?
we turn, how do we get out of Meadow Drive with all this other traffic?
Yeah.
Well, it will be an increase in traffic, but again, it's important to note, today there's nothing there. We acknowledge there's nothing there.
And
It's
there's
been-
still accidents and stuff. How many accidents are there? We're gonna get a thing to find out how many accidents there's been since Tim Hortons opened up.
Yeah.
And how many more are there gonna be? How many lives and how many more people are gonna get in accidents because of this?
We did do a traffic impact study that was submitted to the New York State Department of Transportation. Boston State Road is not, it's not subject to the jurisdiction of the town board. That's actually a state highway. So they've reviewed it. I guess what we would ask you to consider is, obviously this will generate far less traffic than if it was ever developed entirely as commercial purposes. And we are setting aside half of it as permanent open space. Will it increase traffic, sir? Yes, it will. We acknowledge that.
But did you get rid of one single apartment?
No, it's the same number of units,
No,
right?
96 units. Why do we need 96 units in the town of Boston in one spot?
Well, I
We
mean,
are an agricultural town.
well, but again, this particular site though is owned commercial. We're
Yeah, I know.
we're confident that there's a need for additional multifamily.
96 units plus how many single-family residents?
17
So, okay, so you're over 120, 124.
on 35 acres. Yep.
And then with a hotel, how many more people?
And that's a lot of traffic for a 60-foot right-of-way.
No, it's a standard right away. In
That's-
terms of the width of this
60 foot
road,
wide.
yeah, that right away.
So you're gonna have 400 or 500 cars coming and going every single day in the morning and then in the afternoon?
Well, everyone wouldn't leave at exactly the same time.
No, but
They'd
between
leave at-
6 and 8.
Right.
Only when they come home.
Right, right. But it will increase traffic, but remember, I mean, what we're asking you to
If there
consider,
was a second means or a third means of egress, it might be different.
well, but if you look at the plan, where would that be?
It's not possible.
Obviously, no one in this room, well, there's a couple of options. No one in this room would be happy if we proposed to buy a home on Meadow and knock it down and put a roadway. We're not doing that, no one would be happy with that. We acknowledge that.
Wouldn't do it either.
This area, to a large degree, is wetlands, and then there is a National Grid right-of-way here, meaning they own that property. So really, the only means of access that is viable here, and as you know, given where you live, there is no right to have a direct connection onto the 219. So that is the only way, but it is important to note, Jake has spent a lot of time on this. If you look at the New York State Fire Code, the current version that came into effect in October of last year, this layout does comply with those stringent requirements.
It's a fire code, but what about other traffic and safety concerns on there?
Well, I mean, it complies with standards, but traffic overall is subjective, of course.
And who is Roy paying for this whole thing out of his own pocket, or is HUD paying for some of this?
No, there's absolutely no government involvement. This will be market rate,
And it's
paid for and financed by Mr. Everly.
And how expensive is it to continually bring up new plans and keep trying to do this? I mean, at what point does Roy say, maybe it's not worth it when it keeps getting shot down? I mean,
Well, there's never been a vote on it, sir.
yeah, and then, well, there's been votes by the town board that said no.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
The
plan-
planning board has made recommendations, yes.
Yeah,
And they recommend no.
Right, because they want it to be developed as commercial.
And they want to continue to get reelected.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, and they want to continue to get reelected, and the town is
They
vehemently
didn't
opposed to
run for
this.
reelection.
I mean,
Yeah, I can't speak for decision makers because I'm not one of them. It'll be ultimately up to them.
and then of course, if you downgrade the land from commercial to residential, that negatively impacts our property. I mean, you know, it's not worth as much.
Well, I'm not sure that's the case. I guess what I would ask you to consider, and we're not saying that this would happen right now or right or any given time. If it was developed in accordance with its commercial zoning, number one, it would generate more traffic. Number two, it's unlikely that anyone who would do that would set aside half of that site as permanent open space. And third, perhaps most importantly, from the perspective of those homeowners, specifically on the north side of Meadow, I think this is clearly a better option.
Well, it depends on, I don't think anything could be developed there feasibly, commercially, because there's only one means of egress.
Oh, absolutely.
So, well, I mean, maybe a medical corridor or something.
Yeah, right now, we acknowledge, and we've said this in front of the planning board, we're not aware of any demand at this individual moment for there to be commercial use there, but that is what it's zoned for.
And, I mean, I don't really have a problem with single-family residents and being built back there. But when you start putting 96 rental units, and they're not gonna be what I would consider luxury units. I mean, I have here, Clifton Heights, these are luxury apartments, and the rents start at $11.40 for a small one-bedroom.
Right.
And they go up to $18.85 for a three-bedroom.
Yeah, I worked on that.
So, I mean, that is luxury apartments, that's not, when I asked about this before, I was told the target rent range would be around $700 a month.
Well, I doubt it would quite be that level, but it won't be luxury, it will be appropriate for this market. But the comment that we've heard again and again was a suggestion that number one, this is subsidized or low income. Absolutely not. And in fact, Mr. Armerling doesn't own any of those types of projects. It will be market rate housing, you know, appropriate for the market.
I have an ex-girlfriend who lives in one of his apartments, and she is on Belmont, and her rent is $67 a month, and Belmont pays $400 and something of it.
But it's not a subsidized housing project.
That is subsidized, well, she's subsidized.
Well, you can't exclude a tenant that otherwise
Of course,
qualifies,
of
right?
course.
That would violate federal law.
Of course,
But
but it's subsidized rent, and the.
Well, no, an individual who qualifies for subsidized rent, you're not allowed to. That could be true there.
But these apartments, they're not gonna get into. And when it's a luxury apartment.
No, those luxury apartments, there are people that, yes, there are.
Well.
Is it as likely? No.
No.
Right.
So in the Hamburg School District is rated consistently between an 8 and a 10. And when you put 96 rental units, and the rent range is maybe $700 to $900 a month, that's going to impact that score. And it's not going to be for the.
I would take a little bit of exception for that. I grew up in an apartment with a single mom, so I don't think that's necessarily a fair categorization.
It's not.
Say anyone who grew up in an apartment is not a good student or degrades the quality of the school.
No, I'm not saying anybody, but I'm saying when you go from a primarily homeowner, single family, what you have on Meadow Drive, you know, $150,000 to $250,000 home, and you bring in 8-unit apartments, 12 8-unit apartment complexes, that is going to bring down the value of the properties all around Boston. It's going to have a negative impact because you're introducing people who don't pay taxes. They don't pay property taxes. You're going to introduce a lot more single parent households, and it's going to be destabilized. And I think everybody here agrees with me on
Yeah,
this.
you're certainly entitled to that opinion. That all I would ask you to consider is, you know, taking that logic to its extreme. The only thing that would be allowed in the town of Boston or the town would be single-family owner-occupied homes. It's not really a very realistic premise.
What do we need a hotel for?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it's zoned. Remember, that's what the planning board keeps saying. They want commercial.
They do?
Yeah.
Then we better do something about the planning board and stuff too.
I mean, it's important to note, remember, the planning board's not saying this site shouldn't be developed. The planning board's saying they'd rather see the entire thing be commercial. And what we're,
Yeah, that is what they said.
right, and what our position is, we think that this, from the perspective of the nearby property owners, is better than if the site was entirely developed as commercial.
I don't know that that's true or not. I mean, you have to ask each person here.
Right, and that's why we're here.
you know, and I'm bringing up every concern that I have, because I know most of the people here share the same concerns, and these are my neighbors.
Right, no, I appreciate that.
Yeah, my sister's
appreciate that.
family.
I appreciate that.
And you don't have a developer for the street who's selling the lots individually?
Yeah, so-
And they would get their own builder?
Yeah, so let me explain how the subdivision would work. This would be a public road, meaning it has to be built to the town's current specifications in terms of a public road. That would be installed by Mr. Emmerling, and then the individual lots would be sold off for construction of single-family homes. You know, each person would have to come in and get a building permit and go through that process.
So basically what we're saying, all he really wants is those lousy apartments. He could care less about anything
Oh,
else.
no, this,
No, I don't think so.
we believe there's demand.
It's his business.
We do believe there's demand for the single-family homes, and we're hopeful, and remember, he has paid for a marketing study, there's demand for a smaller hotel there.
What would he be selling those lots for, you know? Have an idea what they would sell for?
No, I mean, it would be market rate, but lots
What I
of,
can't imagine is somebody wanting to go into building a brand new house, having
Buy
all these
apartments.
apartments and a hotel there.
Yeah,
Yeah, why would
I
you
would
do
too.
that?
Why would anybody wanna buy a lot
You moved
knowing
to the
that?
country to
knowing-
live in the country.
knowing
You
that-
want-
right, but again, you need to keep in mind, folks, it's zoned commercial, so this is a site the town has designated as being appropriate for development. Your point's well taken, is the general character of Boston rural? Absolutely. But this site is not, you know, similarly situated with all other properties in Boston. Sir?
These proposed rental units, are they gonna be looking like this Army barracks down at Brookfield? Or are they gonna be a welcoming site into our town?
Bill, do you have an idea?
They'll tell you
There would
whatever
be
you wanna
a
hear.
two-story
That's what they did then.
design, and there's similar ones down at Oakwood. I mean, that's the kind of design, it would be different than that, but that's the basic footprint of these units here.
And those rents are in the $700, $800 range, right?
Yeah, I don't know what.
What is it?
It would be in the, like, say, 750 to 950 range, maybe 1,000. It depends on what size the unit is in the building, because they're all different, a little bit different size depending on where they are in the building.
Who would be maintaining and plowing the roads?
Mr. Ermilling's company. Well, the public road, no, there's two, the
town
public
does
road,
this, we do
the
that.
town would do just this road, the public road. The rest of this would all be privately owned, privately maintained.
And the
Well,
town
that
will
means
not
for the
let
phone.
in access
Another-
to the.
Yeah, another question. When this is important for Emmerling to understand, he may already, but when the snowplows go by on Boston State Road,
Right,
th-
sorry about that. Thought that was off.
we get snowdrifts that are 5 or 6 feet high.
Right, the state plows.
And he will have to plow those at 5 AM, 4 AM, 5 AM, and he'll have to come back again at 11 in the morning, and then he'll have to come back again at 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah, that is
It's
true.
not uncommon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if they're not
Facilities we
cleared,
have now.
everybody in there gets stuck.
Yeah, no, that is true. Right.
And the people that live on his apartments on Abbott Road, close to the stadium, complain about the snowplow all the time, all the time.
Well, I mean,
And that's a smaller complex.
but the existing complexes do have tenants, so obviously he's doing a good job, otherwise he wouldn't have tenants, like there are other people that are like that. But yeah, your point's well taken, does it take a lot of individual daily care because of
It
that
does.
proximity? Absolutely. I know there was, I'm sorry, I'm gonna, woman back there.
No, he's had some.
Okay, I'm sorry, sir.
And outside of the appearance of the buildings welcoming people to our town, the 200, over 200 and some parking places that'll be available, the 192 for the apartments and 17 homes, pouring out onto Boston State Road through one entrance, right in the turning lane to get onto 391 is, in my mind, ridiculous. What are we gonna do? Are they gonna get rid of the turning lane to get onto the expressway?
Well, we did submit a traffic impact study. DOT has told us that if ultimately the project gets approved, they will want to take a look at that. So ultimately, if some modifications are needed in Boston State Road as a result of that, that would be Mr. Emmerling's responsibility, and we'll have to do that.
They did nothing for us when Tim Hortons came in there and pours all that traffic out at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
I'm sure they won't do nothing for us until somebody gets killed there.
Right.
Everybody here that, I heard a lot of people in here complain about the flooding in the basement.
Yeah.
And I think everyone here is concerned about what's gonna happen with all the runoff.
Well, drainage standards, you know, compared to when the homes were built on Meadow, and I live in a similar subdivision, the drainage standards that apply to any project today that's gonna result in more than 1 acre of soil disturbance are very stringent. Jake and his company literally have to design a stormwater system and certify to the satisfaction of not only the town, but more importantly, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, that that system can adequately handle a 100-year storm event.
How is that gonna happen?
Jake, do you want to give a summary of, again, it's not fully engineered, but give a summary
Yeah,
of how you.
a brief. So,
Yeah, if
like
you
you said, the
can, if you
DEC
can get
has,
rid of the water problem, I mean, maybe it would be a good thing, but
and that's generally what we do. I mean, when we develop a site, it sounds silly, but it's true. We're gonna improve the drainage of this site because we're gonna direct water to detention areas that is required by the DEC. You need to funnel water, and that's what these are showing. I mean, this is a concept at this point, but, you know, we would put detention areas on this, and you have to release that water in a controlled manner that is equal to or less than the runoff that's on that site today.
No way.
I think it should be I think they should be much, the
do
retention
it all the
area
time.
should be
We
much.
do it all the time. Well,
Well, they'll have
I
to
wish you
decide,
could do
remember,
something. We had rained the other day and Meadow, and from one end to the, between my house and the guys next door, you could have put a boat going down. That's how much water was
Yeah,
going
we-
in there.
yeah.
It was, the pipes weren't even big enough that the water was coming over, and it was about this much over, about 3 feet over, and going into the creek behind me. And the pipe couldn't take enough that it was in between two houses. Good thing we're up high that we didn't get no water inside the house.
Where will
Part of that's
you, where
attributable-
will you drain the retention ponds to?
Jake, you want to explain?
Yeah, there's a ditch that I think you're talking about.
doesn't
the
work.
reservoir.
That doesn't work. It
It's on my property, half those
But
things
that
are on our
water has to go
property.
somewhere, the water has to go in the other direction, it has to head across Boston State Road over to 18 Mile Creek, and you have to build drainage that goes all the way to the creek, I would think. Because that will not, what you have there, those retention ponds will not work. And the water has to, what's draining in that ditch ends up going back around behind the houses on Meadow Drive to the north. And there's it travels underneath Boston State Road, and then it travels down
Yeah.
past Tim Hortons to 18 Mile Creek. You have to increase the capacity of that substantially. And if you're gonna do all this development, you're probably gonna have to do a lot more than what you have here. You're gonna have to spend millions of dollars on
Well,
it.
no, number one, keep in mind, this is not an engineered plan. All we can say at this point in time, we're well aware of those standards, we deal with them every day, we have to meet them. We have to meet them.
The water situation's so bad on Meadow, it's unbelievable.
Well, sir, but that's attributable, again, I live in an older neighborhood, Williamsville, probably similarly situated. At that time, when subdivisions were built, there were no drainage standards. There's no drainage systems in old
I'm
projects.
part of
Well,
Meadow.
there are drainage systems here, but they're not adequate.
They were part of fully engineered plans, there was no DEC requirements, there just weren't. It was just whatever the builder did
But
at that
what you're
time.
proposing here is going to take away the farmland that has retained some of that moisture. So it
No, and that's what Jake has to design to. Jake has to design this system so that there's no more runoff compared to what's there today with it being vacant. No more runoff can come off the site, that's the standard.
And you're right, this might not be an accurate assumption. This farm might get double in size. Or we might have to relocate it to a different spot. I mean, we have to get a topo survey to understand where the low spots are on the site. And then we move things around and work with it.
What do you consider a 100-year flood? It was just.
I don't know, where does your water go now? I don't know what
In
this
the
is.
little ditch, you wanna see it?
Sure.
Yeah, it's
Come on
the,
and see it.
yeah, it's the ditch that runs to the south of your,
This is the
right.
drainage.
It runs along here.
This is the drainage
Yeah,
No, it's actually, well, yeah, it's right
Somewhere
behind our
along
house. and then
Does it run all the
goes
way to the street?
up. No, it'll go up, there's like a little ditch behind our house, and then it curves. And, yeah, and then it goes past the apartments up there, it goes to the apartments.
But that is a common misconception, and I want to acknowledge it, I understand why. Everyone thinks when you develop a site that what you're gonna automatically do is create a drainage problem. That's not the case. Again, under those current standards, again, they're DEC standards from 2015. Jake and his team at Metzger Engineering have to design a system that complies with those standards. And not only do you have to retain the water, you also have to take out the salt, the sediments, the oil. It's an expensive and complicated process. And again, it has to be done to the satisfaction of not only the DEC, but also the town's consultant engineer as well. Nothing can happen on the site while that occurs. And that would apply whether it's developed as commercial or residential, the same standard.
And how does a project like this become profitable with only 96 units? Generally,
Raise the rent.
We believe it will be profitable. I mean, we wouldn't do it otherwise.
Why hasn't he developed it before as commercial?
What?
Why hasn't he developed it commercial if he has all those rights? Why hasn't he done something?
Well, because as we've admitted, right now, we don't think there's significant demand developed that is commercial.
Well, then I guess we should leave it like that then.
Well, that would be the choice, but again, I don't think it's a realistic position to say it should never be developed, because it will be developed in some way, shape, or form. We're not saying, but this is an important point, we're not saying, folks, either support this or have positive views on it. First of all, everyone can form their own opinions, but we're not saying either do this, or lo and behold, in February, we're gonna be in with a site that shows us all as some kind of commercial use that everyone would hate. That's not our position. It is zoned commercial today, though.
Well, at least with commercial, there's rules and regulations for what they can do, noise, garbage, stuff, you put these houses in there and they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, the same laws that apply to both. They do.
And a 60-foot buffer, I'm one of the people that my backyard will be butt up against somebody else's backyard.
Okay.
A 60-foot buffer, my driveway's longer than 60 feet. I can talk to my neighbor from my front porch across the street when she gets her mail. I don't want that in my backyard. I have a built-in pool.
Right.
That field is above it's raised higher than what our ground level is.
Right.
They're gonna be looking right into my pool.
But remember, that buffer wouldn't even apply, if it was developed as commercial, and again, we're not saying that it would be right now, that buffer wouldn't apply. What we've tried to do, Jake spent a lot of time on this, went and took a look at where the vegetation is now, on the edge of the site, meaning on the far side of the field, and he's preserved it in its entirety. So the extent you have that 60 feet, it's not an agricultural field, it's pretty dense vegetation. We're saying, we're gonna leave the vegetation there. It's a pretty good buffer, and it's certainly a better buffer than you would get if it was developed as commercial. And again, we're gonna assure you, the good thing from your perspective is, someone purchases this particular lot that backs up your one of these homes. They can't go into that area. That area is not gonna be owned by them. That area is going to become designated permanent open space forever.
Why would they want it?
Right into our pool.
Because, no, keep in mind, if all things being equal, if we could just choose how we want, we'd make these lots go all the way back. Bigger lots would sell for more. There's no more cost.
Yeah, but you can't because of Article 16 of the New York State. That's why you had to put that in, because Article 16 said 100, you have to allow any property, because there was a petition signed, and you had to move it 60 feet. I think you have to move it 100 feet.
No.
Well,
We didn't have to move it 60 feet. We picked that 60-foot line based on where the vegetation is. You can see it matches.
Right, but Article 16 allowed the town, the people of the town that boarded that property to sign a petition which shot down your development of the property.
Well, it would change the voting requirements.
Yes.
Right, and we changed it partially in response to that, but again, not entirely in response to that. No, the buffers that we're showing are larger than would be required. And again, only because what Jake and Bill decided was, let's just leave the trees. That's where the 60 feet came from. You can see it lines up exactly with where the vegetation is today. We thought that was the part that was most important from the perspective of the neighbors. And again, if you live further back on Meadow, which I'm sure some of you do, the assurance you're getting is there'll never be anything there. Anything. That is gonna be permanent green space. You have that assurance. If you sell your house someday, you can show someone a document. That area can never be developed. That's pretty valuable.
You
And we
kinda
might be
take care of
losing
the
money
frontage
too when we
and-
sell them.
That's gonna be the town's problem.
No, we have to, again, implement that drainage system. Will it address everyone's existing problems? No, it doesn't do that. But could it help somewhat? Possibly.
Could it
But
make
could it make
things
it
worse?
worse? Yeah.
Possibly.
No,
Possibly
no, it
could,
can't.
yes.
It can't. Sir, it
Yes,
can't.
it could.
It really can.
Getting water coming in without even.
I mean, if the position is making it worse, that would mean that literally Jake and his firm don't know what they're doing, which you could have that perspective, but it also more importantly means the town's consulting engineer, Jim Hannon, who's very good, doesn't know what he's doing, and
Yeah, okay.
third, the DEC doesn't know what it's doing. We need to meet those standards.
No, no, one is no good.
We need to meet those standards. If you look online and look at those standards, they are tough standards in terms of drainage.
You ever have 4 feet of water in your yard?
Yeah, I have a ditch in my
No,
backyard,
no,
that
in your
yes.
yard,
In your
your
yard, not
whole
a
yard
ditch,
around
in
your
your yard,
house.
around your house.
But
your
I
whole house.
have a
Your house
backyard that
comes
gets a lot of
behind
water because I have a ditch that services a large portion of Williamsville.
I got a road that brings water to my house, so I don't believe engineers.
Roads aren't,
and
yeah,
I don't
unfortunately,
believe towns.
roads aren't designed to handle 100-year storm events. They're designed to handle 10-year storm events.
What is a 100-year flood? You said that again, that's the second time you mentioned 100 years.
It's 6 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. That's the 100-year.
We should have been here Sunday then.
And the year before.
I was
and
here.
the year before,
There
and the year
was two-
before.
there
Jake, listen to towns.
And the year before.
I live in Boston, I was
It
here.
was 2.5 inches, so we got all this.
And we only got
It was
2
inches.
I know, I live in Heinrich, and I had rivers running down my ravines.
So
Don't decide
now
for
you
1,000.
can understand where the concern is. Bring in more
You know,
water,
I'd
bring in
like
more
to see what
flat
it was.
ground.
I don't even think that was under there, to be honest. I mean, I'd like to see what the National Weather Service said, what the rain event was.
Bob Kohler, I reside at 7100 South Abbott.
Okay.
All this water basically starts and runs back there.
Okay.
On Sunday, I had 3 feet of water behind my house dammed up because the pipes just cannot take that amount of flow. The county did the project across the street. They put in 24-inch culverts into my 20-inch pipe. How does that make sense?
That doesn't make a lot of sense.
And yet, you still want more water to go down there.
No, we can't, again, the water that's conveyed off the site today, with there being nothing there, Jake has to calculate what that is. Then post-development, meaning after all this is located on the site, that number can't increase. It can't. It's not allowed to. And guys, it makes sense. Think about it. What you're doing is you're conveying that water into defined systems, and then you're controlling the rate of release by the size of the pipe. It's not really from a technical perspective.
I
That's
guess
difficult to envision.
the point is, and I live at the corner, and the DOT and the county have been up working on culverts for 20 years there and haven't gotten it right.
Okay.
There's no reason for anybody here to believe that this will be done right either, because the same people that are the so-called experts have been working on that problem for 20 years.
Right, but
And the
remember-
same thing he said, they put culverts in that are too small to handle the water.
But we can't do that on our site. Again, that's trying to rectify
These people
problems.
have, I guess what I'm saying is, these people have engineers working on this too, and the same mistakes have been made. I watched them tear that road up over and over again, doing the same thing.
Right. We have to meet those standards that apply today for a new development, and they are very stringent. We have to. And again, remember, those same standards would apply whether it's developed as residential or commercial, either way. So we acknowledge those requirements. We're not there yet, but we have to meet them. You know, if you ask the town's consulting engineer, I think he would say the same thing. And we're not asking you just to trust Jake and his team, which again, he will be putting his